Okay.
All right, we're about to go live. The little bar is moving toward the right, so bear with me one moment.
Just get my little gizmo for minutes and stuff. Hang on one second. I'll be right back. Coming right
Okay.
back.
All right, we are now live.
All right. So I will just start reading the script to start. Call this meeting of the MAPC officers to order. This meeting is being conducted. Sorry, I beat you to the punch there. This meeting is being conducted remotely via Zoom video conference, consistent with Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023. To provide public access to the meeting while limiting the potential for abuse of video conferencing technology, i.e. Zoom bombing, members of the public may view the proceedings at https://www.youtube.com/user/MAPC Metro Boston. With that, we will call this meeting officially to order, and we will go right to the approval of minutes from July 10th, 2023. Any questions, comments, amendments to the minutes?
Yes.
Okay.
So I don't actually think we can vote on these minutes today. Patrice provided me and I edited slightly the minutes, but there was an executive session seemingly, although I don't really remember that, honestly.
No, there was no exec. You left the room for discussion, but there was no executive session.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, and I have the minutes for that. I think I don't think I've sent them out to Patrice yet, but I have them drafted, so I can send them out.
So if you would send those out, Imai, to Patrice and to me,
Okay.
We can incorporate them, and then I think we will have to vote on the the July and August minutes in September.
Great, that sounds fair.
Okay, we can still see if people have any comments on the rest of the minutes, but I'm assuming not. So,
Sam, any comments on the minutes?
No, nothing here. Nothing
Great.
here.
All right, so why don't we move to contracts?
okay, now here I could share my screen if Patrice will give me. Patrice, are you still on? Yes, you are. Do you need to give me hosting rights so that I can share my screen for the pass-through minutes?
Oh, will do. One moment, Mark.
All right. I'm sorry, not the pass-through minutes. I meant to say the pass-through contracts, excuse me. All right. So the question is, can you see them?
Yes.
Fabulous. Wow. Okay. All right. So thank you, of course, as always, to Anna and Lourdes for preparing these, and I edited them slightly. I will mention the top one is our contract with the Education Superhighway, an organization very prominent nationally in the digital equity field. They are our partner in the major MBI partnership grant. And we went through a considerable and appropriate process to procure them as our partner. And they are receiving this contract with a pass-through amount of $200,000. So that is item number one. The other contracts are mostly related to, I'm sorry for all of the acronyms there. I think this is called Municipal Rescue Coordination. Every community, I think, or every HMCC region has an MRC. We contract with the MRCs in our region. This is part of our function as the Health and Medical Coordinating Coalition for DPH. Quincy, actual purchase, installation, and maintenance of the Wi-Fi services and equipment in the very large O'Brien Towers public housing in Quincy. And then some contracts with individual artists regarding our our ongoing work in the Boston Urban Agriculture Strategy, and lastly, some translation services for the Malden Climate Action Plan. A little more discussion than I usually do for the pass-through contracts, but there they are. Glad to take any questions if there are any.
Questions for Mark?
I've got a short question that is more just kind of a general learning question for me, but I'll bring it up anyway, just because we have, I think, a little bit of time. When we do pass contracts, Mark, or maybe Sam, is there like an admin fee the agency takes, or does it just go right through?
I'll let Mark take that one.
No, it's not really related to whether or not it's a pass-through contract, Imai. Usually speaking, there is no admin fee.
Okay.
When we act as a fiduciary and enter into contracts or financial relationships with an unincorporated entity, there is an admin fee. That is, I think, 5% if we are not directly involved in the work, and 2% if we actually are involved in the work. For the most part, pass-through contracts are simply our contracts with other people for services. Sometimes pass-through contracts are moving federal or state money through MAPC to another entity, usually a municipal government. So the pass-through contracts are actually, they come in a variety of flavors. They're all on this list.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So give me a moment now. I will eliminate the pass-through contracts, and I will add or bring up the revenue contracts. Just bear with me a second.
Mark, while you're pulling that up, just on Imai's question, there's literally no fee we take on some of those. I thought we took some portion just for the time and effort that MAPC had to spend.
Well, so let's say the Department of Public Health gives us $1 million to do a program. You will see a contract with the department, between the Department of Public Health and MAPC for $1 million. Now, you may later see a contract or contracts with individual entities in the field totaling $800,000, because yes, we are getting a fee of $200,000. It's not so much a fee as it is actual operating revenue for the work of our staff managing that program. That is a little different. We don't consider that exactly being paid a fee, but for all practical intents and purposes, yes, it is being paid a fee.
Right. But it's covering the time and effort that MAPC is putting.
That's exactly right.
That component.
Which is not usually solely like overseeing the paperwork of the grant. That usually we play a substantive role in most of these activities as well. For example, with our Homeland Security grants, we do a lot of planning and management and procurement work through those grants, in addition to being the fiduciary for all the monies that flow to regional Homeland Security councils. And yes, we get paid for both of those things.
Right. Okay. That's sort of jibes with what I thought. Yeah.
It is a fairly complicated answer, I understand. All right. So if you bear with me a second now, I am going to share the revenue contracts. Can you see it?
Yes.
Wow, I'm getting really good at this. I hope you guys take this into account in my review. A month ago, I could never make this work. So, all right. So now, if we take a look at the revenue contracts, I will just see if there's anything particularly worth noting here. I mean, they're all pretty standard and widely varied revenue contracts in the month of June. And then thus far, only one in July. I don't know that any of them require any particular explanation, honestly. They're for pretty traditional planning work. If there are any questions, I'd be glad to answer. I guess one interesting one is the town of Hopkinton, where we are helping the Hopkinton Public Health Department determine its future through a strategic planning process. We are doing that jointly with the Collins Center at UMass. And you'll see the $15,000 pass-through. I actually signed that contract yesterday. So that comes in as a $37,000 grant. $22,000 is for us, $15,000 is for the Collins Center. We're doing that work together. I am eager to develop a more collaborative and less competitive relationship with the Collins Center. I spoke with their director recently. As some of you may know, our board member, Karen Canfield, is now an employee of the Collins Center, or a contractor. I'm not quite sure which one, but she's working there. And this is just a little evidence of our collaboration with them.
Since I always can come up with some question. So this starts out the fiscal year. How does this feel for a kickoff to a new fiscal year in terms of dollar amounts, number of contracts, et cetera?
Well, June was the old fiscal year. July is the new fiscal year. I would say July was a little bit slow on revenue contracts, but there is so much in the hopper. I honestly think the main reason for this is that everyone's switching fiscal years.
Right. Yeah.
Anna, I don't know if you have anything further to suggest on this.
No, you are right, Mark. We have a lot of contracts. You will be seeing them in the next couple of months. There's a lot going on.
Okay. Thanks.
Oh, there's Jana. I'm going to admit her. Okay.
Yeah, Jen texted saying she would be joining, but unable to turn her video on. So she will be with us.
All right. Any further questions on the revenue contracts?
Great.
All right, hearing none, I will close that.
So why don't we turn then, Mark, to hiring and staff changes?
Okay. So the main issue, I think all of you know, is the departure of Jackie Dabo as Director of Community Engagement after a very short time with us. She decided, for a variety of reasons, it was not the job she anticipated, and it was not the place she anticipated. And I am meeting with Jackie in person near her home in Taunton for coffee on Thursday. I will learn more at that point in time. Lizzie and Holly and the community engagement team have all spoken or met with Jackie. We are trying to learn as much as we can from what I would say is overall an unfortunate circumstance, but as difficult as it is to have it happen after 3 weeks, it is better than having it happen after 6 months. We need to fill this position, and Lizzie and I are discussing a variety of options for that. We could conceivably go back to a prior finalist. We could search and consider some possible promotions internally, or we could do an external search. Those things are actually not mutually exclusive. I mean, you do an external search, you might end up with one of the finalists from last time, so they do overlap a little bit. We are considering the appropriate process, and I expect we'll be deciding on that this week. I don't know if Lizzie has anything she wishes to add.
I think you covered it, Mark. I think, the only thing I will note here is that, as Jackie was leaving, she shared some of her perspectives about why she was leaving, and we're, taking them very seriously and connecting with the team about them as well. And I feel like we are already undertaking some of the challenges that Jackie experienced that were places where we felt like things that we could fix. I think a lot of Jackie's reasons for leaving were also very personal to her. And so, we're trying to meet the moment of the things that we know we could change I think some of those pieces are already underway, particularly around onboarding, because that's really what she was doing in the 3 weeks that she was with us. That's the only other thing I'd add, Mark.
Thank you, Lizzie. I'm back over to you.
Yeah, I mean, I would only, well, Sam, you go first, sorry.
Well, I don't know what can be shared, what should be shared, what shouldn't be shared, but it sounds like maybe there was a cultural mismatch between the person and the place, but I'm not sure if that's accurate or not. And I don't know if it should even be discussed in this forum, but
Yeah, I will be straightforward that I am reluctant to discuss what I think is sort of the personal details of a personnel issue.
sure. Sure.
But I am glad, I can have those conversations with officers individually, as long as there's only one officer on the phone. That's appropriate from an open meeting perspective. I do think that I would underline the point that Lizzie indicated, that we are taking all of the issues very seriously in attempting to craft our approach to new leadership of the department.
Sure.
I would note that our previous leader of community engagement was here for 13 years. So it is possible to, and the vast majority of our directors and managers are here for long stays of time. I can recall 2 other circumstances, both with more minor, not minor, but not directorial positions, where people came and left very promptly after arriving. That is not a bad record out of probably 200 to 300 hires in the last couple of decades. But it will happen occasionally.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, I was going to say something else that I'll also share, but to that point, I think it is important to, I think it's really great that you're being very thoughtful and attentive to both Jackie and learning from what she experienced in those 3 weeks, as well as to what concerns staff raise in regard to what happened. But I also think it is important to not overemphasize what is likely an incredibly rare exception to the normal course of onboarding somebody. And then the other thought I had that I'm sure I am saying something that you're very aware of, but when you mentioned, a hybridization of a reopened search with prior candidates being part of that, in my experience, people who were passed over will not apply without being clearly communicated with that they are being asked to reapply, as to not put themselves through another round of rejection.
Yeah.
So just, I think keeping that in mind would be helpful.
Yeah. All right. On other hiring and staffing issues, filling the management positions in the land use department, 2 open management positions is a very important element. Getting additional staff on board to manage our digital equity grants, at least 1, I think possibly 2 additional staff, 1 in Muni Collab and 1 in data services, is also very important. I am also reviewing a draft job description for Director of Data Services, which is obviously an exceptionally critical role here. I think that Tim's last day is on Friday, and we will be celebrating his departure on, well, no, we will not be celebrating his departure. We will be celebrating his 20 years of service to the agency in the region at an event on Thursday evening, late afternoon evening, which I am going to encourage as many officers as possible to attend. This is an important event for MAPC. Tim has really been a leader, a thought leader, and an extraordinarily productive person on the mission and accomplishments of the agency in the last 20 years. I'd like to send him off properly. I hope that some of you will try and be there if at all possible. And those are some of the main items underway currently with hiring and staffing. Lizzie, did you want to add anything?
Sorry, to unmute. No, I think that's right. We did have a couple of other of our new hires start. And so our Assistant Director of Clean Energy, Jeremy Koo, started this past month, and so did Norman Abbott in Government Affairs. And then we have a full complement of interns at the moment. as usual, they are like some of the brightest and most eager minds in our field, and just like really often running with a whole bunch of projects and programs across the agency, which is great. I do think I did interviews last week for that digital equity hire and municipal collaboration. And also, I think you might remember we got a very large contract from DPH to do some public health training and coordination across our region. And we are starting off hiring the lead coordinator for that position, and then we'll staff up that team from there. And so those finalist interviews are also underway right now.
Thanks, Lizzie.
Great. Thank you, Lizzie.
You bet.
That's our update.
Sam?
I would only ask that I cannot be there on Thursday. I have a friend who's arriving in town, and I'm going to be a chaperone for the week.
Bring him along for a drink, Sam. Come on.
I could do that. It's him plus wife plus teenage kids. I don't know
The
if
teenage kids will love it.
So if I show up with 4 people, we'll be heading off to a Red Sox game. So maybe we'll all stop by. But if I don't make it there, please, if you do remember, please tell him my best. I think he was an intern for Holly way back, and I think he saved her bacon once or twice, and she was always referred to him as Saint Timothy, as I recall. So
Yes, that's true. But he was actually an intern for Martin,
oh really?
and he moved over to data services
Yeah. So he's
as a staff person.
So I personally feel it because it's also that marking of time of 2 decades,
Yes.
which is a little frightening all by itself.
All right.
One specific question though, on government affairs, are you leaderless there, or how's that
We
going?
have Leah Robbins. as
Leah
our
Robbins.
Oh,
director.
Leah
Now
Robbins
for a while.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
And
no,
she's
no. I'm sorry.
amazing.
Municipal collaboration. Is that Mark
So
Fine?
municipal
That's what I was trying.
collaboration. We have a finalist interview with the only applicant.
Okay.
Because that was an internal process. And there was one applicant. Lizzie and I will be interviewing her. I think I want to say Wednesday, right?
Wednesday. That's right.
And then
Yep,
my
Wednesday.
expectation that our hiring announcement will probably post date that interview by perhaps as long as 10 minutes. So, yeah, all right.
Okay, because that seems like a pretty critical thing you all do at MAPC. And I was
Yes.
just curious.
And the current interim director has made a very seamless transition into that interim role. I feel like they haven't missed a beat. If anything, they have picked up the pace.
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, good luck there. But congrats.
Thanks.
That sounds good.
Okay.
Thanks.
Jen, I'm realizing I haven't asked you, do you have any questions about hiring and staff changes?
I don't. Thanks for checking at them.
Thank you, Jen. All right, so next on the agenda is to look at our draft agenda for the August 16th Executive Committee meeting. I think it's pretty straightforward. Hopefully will be a brief meeting. Any questions or comments about that?
Yeah, I didn't think it was necessary to bring it up on the screen. It's very, very simple. I made it an hour. It shouldn't even take an hour, but instead of an hour and a half. And it is on Zoom. I just want to be clear. Nobody should start driving in. We're taking the train or the boat. It's on Zoom.
I have to say this morning, for whatever reason, I think it's because we spoke last week, Mark. I was very confident we were on Zoom, but
Yeah.
when Imai sent that text, I was like, oh no. It's like, am I supposed to be heading into the city?
I'm glad I didn't head in. That would have just stand outside the doors of MAPC on my phone.
Well, there would have been someone there. Patrice is there. Patrice is at MAPC. All right.
All right, so we're good for that agenda. So next agenda item is the executive director's review. So Mark,
Adam.
you sent us, go ahead.
Could I ask that we might do other business first, both enabling us to adjourn seamlessly at the end of the meeting without having to call back on and live stream again?
Yeah, why don't we do that?
And also because there is another business item that I would like Lizzie and I to update you on.
Great. Any objections to that? Great. All right, so yeah, we'll skip to 8. Go for it.
Yeah. So on Thursday afternoon, we had a Metro Mayor's meeting with Secretary Kate Walsh, who's Secretary of HHS. She pulled me aside at that meeting, let me know that there was going to be an announcement on emergency assistance, but she was not at liberty to talk about it with the mayors at that lunch meeting. And we then proceeded to have what I thought was a very productive and open discussion about really two separate topics. One is homelessness and the migrant crisis we're currently facing, and the second was opioid addiction and treatment. Substance use disorder issues. It was in some ways it was a meet and greet between the secretary and the mayors and managers, but we also got down to brass tacks on a number of critical issues. It was not even, I don't think we even left the meeting, Lizzie. She was gone.
That is correct.
Yeah, and the secretary was gone, but I don't think we even left the meeting before we heard that the governor was planning, or at least considering, an emergency declaration to come out the next day, Friday, that would, among other things, suspend the right to shelter that all families have in Massachusetts. The right to shelter does not extend to homeless individuals, but it does cover all families with children, and has been a multi-decade hallmark of how we address homeless issues in Massachusetts. And I would say that Lizzie and I and Leah and several other members of the team have probably spent the last 4 days, including the entire weekend, on nothing but this issue. It does appear now as though a different type of announcement will be made tomorrow. It will be, I think it is fair to call it less drastic, and but also focused on what is a bona fide emergency. We do not have enough space or enough services for migrants currently arriving in the Commonwealth. And our sort of, what I would call, for lack of a better term, our domestic homeless system, which has always had to deal with a certain degree of migrant inflow, is not set up to deal with a massive nationwide, arguably international immigrant crisis, which is what we're facing at the moment. So we believe, Lizzie and I and the staff at MAPC, I think, reflecting the views of both MAPC and our two mayoral coalitions, do not believe that suspending the right to shelter is appropriate, nor would it be effective, since most of those immigrants, not maybe as many, but most of them are going to continue to come here. And we also believe that it takes time and attention away from sort of more productive, if less fancy ways of addressing this issue. The staff is very, very heavily focused at the moment on trying to help the administration to put into effect meaningful reforms and service additions. We are also working to help with our best practices guide for municipalities that we issued last year. We are working individually with cities and towns to try and help them to both be helpful and cope with the issues they are facing. And we are encouraging the legislature and federal authorities to provide the necessary resources. Lizzie, I'm going to pause there. And this is just a very brief thumbnail sketch, but I want to see if Lizzie has anything to add at the moment.
No, I think you highlighted it, Mark. I think, you know, in particular, we are kind of pulling together a lot of the teams that were working most closely during COVID. So it's our public health team and our municipal collaboration team, because a lot of the services that we're trying to coordinate for new arrivals are honestly very similar to the wraparound services we felt like we needed to provide to the most vulnerable residents in our region during COVID. And so I know it might sound a little strange to hear it, but it's honestly a muscle that we're used to flexing at the moment. And so I think one of the things that I think has been challenging for our cities and towns is that the administration, I think that it's true, feels like they are on the phone all day, every day with cities and towns asking for their help and support, and whether that's finding sites or finding services or even helping on the workforce side. The reality is they're actually not coordinating maybe as nimbly as they could be. And I think it's a place where it's not just that MAPC, we're here to like hammer them and say, you're not coordinating well. We're actually trying to offer like support and assistance to the administration so that their coordination can actually be more streamlined. So just by way of example, I think it's not surprising that like not every community wants to have an article in the paper that they've welcomed, 63 new families, from Haiti into their community. But a lot of communities have support services that they could offer to a different community that is available to welcome those 63 new families from Haiti that are coming in. And so part of what we're trying to do is help connect the dots so that the administration isn't calling 15 different communities to get those services that those families need, but maybe is making a series of calls to the right people to try to coordinate those efforts. And that's really the role that we are trying to play for them. I think there's like a lot of room for us to be helpful and to assist the administration here. The only other thing I'll just note is that this issue is very personal for a lot of MAPC staff because they work on immigration issues or are themselves immigrants or their families are, and so feel these issues very deeply. So Mark and I, and I'd say the whole team at MAPC is just kind of keeping that in mind because I think it's a very personal issue for a lot of people who we work with every day.
And I can share with the officers the notice that MAPC, the sort of update that MAPC shared, or that Lizzie and I, shared with the staff this morning.
Yeah.
And I've just sent that to the officers.
One of the things we learned from COVID from our internal review is that our staff wants more information about how they can be in the loop on these issues. And so I think it was good that we actually sent that communication out this morning.
Jennifer, I am noticing that I think Patrice noticed this earlier today. I still only have a Rockland address for you. So if you could share with me electronically either your personal address or your Hall address, I'm not sure what is right at the moment, then I can make sure you're actually getting notices.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I will put, we're operating on my phone right now. If you don't mind, I could just give
No,
it to you
doesn't
now.
have to be now.
Oh, okay, all right, I will send that to you then.
Just later on, yeah. Any questions?
You may.
Yeah. First of all, just so I understand the connection of why the Healy administration was thinking of rescinding the Right to Shelter Act, was that basically to take pressure off of them because they felt that they could not meet that standard and so would no longer, kind of set themselves up to fail in this current crisis? Was that the thinking, or was it something else that they were doing?
I may have some things to add on this, but Lizzie, I'm going to ask you to give your perspective first.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing I keep hearing over and over again from the many administration officials I have talked to, as Mark said, over the course of the last 72 hours, is that it was really about the capacity. And I think that they feel very strongly that they're at such capacity that it's creating safety issues in the existing shelter system.
Okay.
So that they can't meet the services needs for her families that are coming in, that they, for, I think a brief moment, they felt like it would actually be better to say, we have to actually stop doing this. I have some thoughts about what has occurred since they decided not to take those steps. I think some of it is political and some of it is actually kind of recognizing that we actually might be in a stronger position as a state to really call on the federal government to provide significant aid, since we are the only right to shelter state.
Thank you.
I have heard a number of people say, including the lieutenant governor, that we are the only right to shelter state. I don't think that's quite accurate, but
It's accurate as a state. We're the only, there's lots of right to shelter regions and major
Cities,
metropolitans
yeah.
across the country, but we are in fact the only right to shelter state where it's enshrined in state law.
yeah, all right.
For 40 years though, for 40 years.
So I also think the only thing I would add to what Lizzie said is that I think the administration actually consists of, many people are working on this issue. And I think they had a little challenge coming to a unified consensus. And some people might have gotten a little bit out over their skis unintentionally, I'm sure. I do think that we are now placing some families, and remember, these are families with children, in hotels without supportive services attached. Because we have run out of space and we have run out of services. And I think many individuals responsible for this work in the administration are exceptionally nervous about that combination, because people can be preyed upon in that setting and arguably end up in a very bad situation. Remember that many of these people come from countries, at the moment it's mostly Haiti, but that varies from time to time. They come from places where it is not uncommon to be preyed upon, and where there is no expectation that you have a way to address that issue. So, or that government might be your help, when in fact government is sometimes your enemy. So I do think they are grappling, and it's important for us to recognize they are grappling with an enormously complex and difficult issue. We just don't feel that abandoning the right to shelter is the right way to handle that, and we do feel there are other steps that can be taken, which we're not the only ones coming up with. Many allies and compatriots in this work are coming up with good recommendations, which I hope will be consolidated to the administration.
I can think of a question if we want to talk about it more. I mean, but if we don't, you can just shut this down. But I'm not quite sure what the relationship of the state to the municipalities is. I would assume a locality would at least feel the burden of looking after that family if the state was no longer available. I don't know if that's how the system is set up, but if you're in Weymouth or you're in Cambridge or Weymouth is going to recognize they have a family in a hotel somewhere, I assume. But
yeah, I mean, there is the question of communication. As Lizzie said, the administration feels they're communicating endlessly, and the communities often feel like they're not getting the information they need in a timely manner. As we all know from our work, both can be true at the same time. And I think we're working particularly at MAPC to try and improve the substance and frequency and usefulness of the back and forth communication. Right now, there are, communities are very concerned about school. And, it is legitimately hard to know how many kids are going to be, are going to need a place in the schools of community X, when you don't know how many of those people will still be in that place 3 weeks from now. Yet you have to make a plan for those kids. And you have to deal with the fact that a lot of these people who are actually eligible for work permits have been waiting for a year without getting an answer from the federal government on their work permit. And you have to deal with a lot of things that it's very hard for the state to deal with. Municipalities, I think, sometimes look upon the state as sort of being all-knowing and all-powerful. And the reality is that, they're not. Oh, they can't always control these things. I spoke with another, leader in a community. There's a fair number of these immigrants housed locally, who actually indicated that human services was not the issue. They have 4 human service agencies in that community that are doing just fine in providing services to those immigrants. There are other issues that they are facing. Alternatively, the other side of the coin, you could have, 40 immigrants in a hotel in a suburban community with very limited human service delivery capacity, that's the big issue in that community. I also think, I'll just close on this, that we are struggling with the issue that on the one hand, and MAPC often says this, the fair thing is for every community to bear its fair share of the burden. On the other hand, some communities are set up to address these issues and some communities are not, which is where the issue of sharing what you do contribute as a community, but getting some help from a neighboring community, as Lizzie indicated, is exceptionally important in this discussion.
Yeah, and only thing I would just say is that the only other piece is that of the puzzle is that I think families are coming from a number of different places. So sometimes families are coming in sort of at like a particular, they're coming and they show up at Boston Medical Center. Some families show up in a particular community. And so I think, I keep putting on my like best intent hat. And I think there are lots of instances where communities don't necessarily know that families have arrived, particularly in a hotel, until after the fact. And so, yes, I think then are trying to find ways to support, but might have put some additional supports in place in advance if they knew those families were coming. Typically, it's also usually not just 3 or 4. It's usually a good number of families. I mean, the Secretary Walsh the other day indicated that they had helped 25,000 recent arrivals.
Mark, a question and a comment. Question, given that we're talking about it in this public meeting and you sent that email to staff, not that I'm planning on like tweeting it out or something, but anything you shared today is generally shareable, like if it came across again conversation, or is there some discretion you'd like us to exercise, or how do you want us to treat the information?
I think I would treat it with the discretion that I know every member of this board has.
Okay.
Where we are frank about our perspectives on how well people are doing or what they need to do, it's probably best that we are able to have those conversations quietly with them. I'll be honest, I was on a call with about 25 people last night with the governor, lieutenant governor, and was a little disappointed to see how much of that call appeared in the Globe this morning. I think that was not necessarily a wise course of action. On the other hand, everything we say in this meeting is public record, and Lizzie and I are speaking accordingly.
Right. Got it. And then my comment, I know I said this to you, Mark, when we spoke earlier, but I think what is unfolding is a humanitarian tragedy, but I think I've been doing a lot of thinking about this sort of aligned or separate from our MAPC discussions. It could be less than a decade before we have millions of climate refugees coming to Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Like I think we need to get very serious about what the reality of the future could hold in terms of people needing to come to places like Massachusetts based on any varying number of things making where they currently live uninhabitable. So I don't have the solution, but Band-Aids are definitely not the solution, right? A very comprehensive, planful process needs to be chartered by the state.
Yeah.
Yep. And I'll say, Adam, on that, I think it's part of the reason why I feel like it's not the right course of action to rescind our right to shelter, because in a very short period of time, that will be something that we will have to contend with.
Right. Right.
So we should figure out how to get it right.
Right. Sam, go ahead. Well, one more, we should move on to.
Somebody mentioned to me regarding climate that there also will be within the confines of Massachusetts migration away from hotter areas towards cooler areas. And that will presumably be out of the metro areas to central and western Massachusetts. I don't know if that's accurate. but since we're talking about
Yeah,
climate.
well, none of us know if it's accurate. I think that's probably a lesser problem than the general issue that people are going to be moving both within the country and externally from areas that, make downtown Boston look shady and cool. But I think we should probably close this conversation now so we can move on to other things without breaking our agenda too much. But Lizzie and I both wanted you to be aware of what was going on.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Appreciate all the work on that. It's hugely important.
Thanks, Iman.
So, Mark, we'll now go back to the executive director review,
Yes.
which will not be an executive session. But would you like Anna and Lizzie to leave for that portion of the discussion?
Yes, and Patrice,
Yes.
so that Imai will once again be in his role as scribe.
Okay.
And
Thanks,
then,
everyone.
okay.
Thank you, Lizzie.
All right.
Have a
Thank
good
you,
one.
everyone.
And before I go, I just want to be clear that I'm going to shut down the YouTube stream because
No.
is the portion of the meeting over or
Yeah,
No, keep it on for now, Patrice.
okay?
but I guess the question is, Patrice, before you leave,
Mm-hmm.
there will be an executive session, and at that point, it should be shut down. I am not able to do that, so can I text you when that moment arrives?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And also, will I be required to leave also? And you will text me when it's time for me to come back and shut down the YouTube stream.
Yes, and you'd only be coming back to shut down the YouTube stream.
Okay.
You will not need to do anything after that because we are taking, I understand from Margie, we are taking executive session as the last item on the agenda. Adam will indicate that all other business has been conducted, and there will simply be an adjournment at the end of that.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make you the host, Mark.
Thank you.
And right now you're the co-host, but I will officially make you the host.
And I will text you when you need to come back
Yes.
to deal with the YouTube because I don't know how to do that. So.
Yep. Okay, and when I come back, I'll just hop on to the Zoom line. All right, goodbye, y'all.
Thank you, Patrice.
So, Mark, just not to jump right in, but so I felt like at our last meeting we had a good discussion. Ended up with a favorable review of your performance that I need to document. So we can talk about it for a minute, but I think what might make sense is to document a favorable performance review, incorporate your written evaluation into that, and keep that for whatever record keeping purposes you think are appropriate. But why don't we spend a minute either answering questions that members of the officers have about your written self-evaluation or any highlights you want to go over. But I just want to make sure we have time to talk about your contract.
I don't really, the self-evaluation is short this year, uncharacteristically, and it is late characteristically, but I think it pretty much outlines the challenges, the successes and challenges. Meeting those challenges is kind of like job one as we go into the strategic planning and DEIA process, which is really sort of one of the biggest activities of this fiscal year, and which by coincidence it really corresponds with the fiscal year. So I don't have that much more to add. I'm glad to answer any questions or, of course, hear people's comments and suggestions if that's appropriate.
Any comments, suggestions, feedback? Jen, anything?
No, I apologize because I think I may have missed email communications. I don't know if it's because it went to my Rockland address. I had sent out, my new email address previously.
I
So I
suspect
can't
that's
comment.
correct, Jennifer. I'm really sorry about that.
That's okay.
Is
That's
it
okay.
useful for me to send just the self-evaluation and the contract to your new address right now?
you can, the other issue I'm running into, and I apologize because it's just a busy morning. I need to have my son checked in at
I know.
10:20, and I hate to be disruptive, especially at this portion of the meeting. So you could certainly send those, Mark, and I could take a look at them.
I just sent them to
That-
Regina.
Okay. Okay, so let me take a look at those. I guess I'm just trying to figure out the best way to do this. I will be in the car for the next 20 minutes,
Well,
so I may not
don't
have a
look at
chance
them
to
while
look
you're
at them.
driving.
Yeah, I
Jennifer.
can't. That's not going to
No,
work.
it's not that important.
Yeah, so I don't want to drag this out. I can't comment on what I haven't
You
read
can
yet.
also.
And am I following this correctly? That the discussion right now is on self-evaluation.
Yeah, right now the discussion is on review. Yeah.
Okay, so let me take a quick look at that before I hop in the car. And why don't you guys continue the discussion?
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yes, I would also note, just to take a little pressure off you, that it's still possible, you know, after the meeting for you to have just a one-on-one conversation with Adam about the content or any
Okay.
other matters on this issue. So
Okay.
I don't want your son to be late for this appointment.
Yeah.
I just
neither
did
do
it
I.
for mine.
Stressful enough procedure.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
No, thank you, Jen. So then why don't we move into executive session so we can
Okay.
start talking about the contract. Before we entertain that motion, Mark, so will you leave but stay by your phone in case we want to bring you back in to answer any questions?
I will. The first thing I need to do is tell Patrice that she has to come back.
Okay.
And shut off the recording. So I'm doing that right now.
But let's when she comes back on, let's just get the motion in the public streamed session to go into
Okay,
executive
good.
session. Then
Um,
why don't we just do that while you're doing that?
May I ask a question? We will discuss the salary, I assume, right?
Right.
Mark has made a request / recommendation for his salary. Should we
Correct.
deal with that now or just in our discussions?
I think we
Not
should
deal with it, but hear from him specifically what is.
Well, you know what? Why don't we go into executive session with Mark, ask him in executive session, and then dismiss him if appropriate for further talk amongst ourselves.
Okay.
So what I would do is I would entertain a motion to enter executive session for the purpose of discussing and negotiating a successor agreement with the executive director. And given that talking about that in public would not be in the best interest of the MAPC officers. And that we would come out, we will adjourn from executive session.
So moved.
Second.
All right, so the motion's been made and seconded. I'll call the roll. Imai,
Aye.
Sam,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So we're in executive session. All right, so when we have Patrice, she can stop the live stream.
Right, and let me, I'm just gonna take myself off video and mute for a moment. I have texted her, but let me call her, okay? Patrice is just walking back upstairs. If you'll give her a moment.
Yeah, that's fine.
And she will come back on. And I guess there's a question of both the live streaming and the recording. Is that right? Are those two separate things?
They're separate, yeah, and we should shut off the recording as well.
Yeah, okay. Well, Sam, I certainly hope that whatever Red Sox game you go to on Thursday is going to be a little better than the recent past.
I honestly haven't followed them at all this year, but my sense is they're
You
not.
haven't missed much.
I don't feel like they're doing so well, but
They
It was a
really
really-
had a good run, but it was.
They had a good run there in July, but
not so much.
we've not been able to keep it up.
I don't know. It was belying the reality of their talent.
Oh, really? Yeah. Well, it'll be fun to go to a game anyway.
It is.
Yeah, still a fun environment for sure.
Yeah.
I'm taking relatives from Holland to a Red Sox Astros game in at the end of August. I don't know if they'll understand it at all, but they want to go. I'm going to admit Patrice. There she is. Hi, Patrice. So Adam is going to give you some instructions now.
Okay.
Patrice, you can stop both the live stream and the recording.
Okay. Bear with me one moment. Oh, I am not the host. Will someone please make me the co-host?
Oh, okay. How
Or
do I
the-
do that?
So you're going to go to if you go to participants, you're going to see the menu of all the people that are in this meeting. And then to the right-hand side, there's going
Yeah.
to be like a little thing for you to click on, and you'll see options. One of those options would be to make me co-host.
All right, just 1 second. Make co-host.
Yes.
Do you really want to do this? Okay, I do. Yeah.
What's with the doubt you give us there, Zoom?
Wow.
All right.
You really want to pay this company $400, you know?
Okay, bear with me one moment while I stop the YouTube. Right now, I'm going to stop the recording. Okay, and bear with me. I'm still working on stopping the YouTube live stream. Okay, that is proving a bit more difficult. Mark, would you please make me the host?
Oh, maybe you have to be the host, not the co-host. Okay.
Host.
Make host. Yes, I really want to do it.